Distinguished guests, please welcome Albany City School District Superintendent Joseph Hochreiter. Fifth grade student from Albany School of Humanities, Raylena Terrell. NYSET President Melinda Person. And please welcome the 57th Governor of the great state of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul.
Good morning. My name is Raylena Terrell, and I'm a fifth grade student here at Albany School of Humanities. Today, I'd like to talk about my passion for reading. I love reading so much because it brings me to a new world, and I get to experience new things. There are so many genres of books I'd like to read. I started reading chapter books in first grade, and this sparked my love for reading, and I haven't stopped reading since. My teachers have been amazing in helping me learn to read, and my school gives me a lot of genre options to read. They let us choose our favorites so that we have more of what we personally like to read. My love for reading is really big. It lets me get personal time to myself, and it brings out the real me when I read. When I read, it lets me gain new experiences with each book I read. Where the Red Fern Grows is one of the books I read, and it's a heart-touching story. In chapter 19, both of the dogs died, and he didn't really understand why his dogs had to die. But in the last chapter, a red fern grew in the graves of his dogs. A belief that his father had was that angels come and plant a red fern on graves. This book made me really happy because it helped me understand that people are always watching over me. I know that reading will take me places in the future. Reading helps me learn, and I can do a lot of reading for jobs when I'm older. When I grow up, I want to be a marine biologist, and reading will help me get there. I can learn a lot about underwater species and how they live from the books about marine biology that I read. Reading is a passion of mine, and I hope to treasure forever. Now, thanks to Governor Hochul, students across the state will be able to learn how to read just like me. Thank you, Governor Hochul, and thank you for coming to my school today to talk about this subject that I love so much.
Good morning. Wow. Fifth grade, are you sure not high school? You didn't slip in here from the high school? Really, I want to thank you for just reminding us the joy that people can have when they open up the pages of a book. It takes you away, it engages you, it helps you even face some of your own challenges with stories like you just relayed. So I've been addicted to books since I was a very young girl as well. I used to go off to our public library at a time when you're 8 years old, your parents let you leave by yourself and walk through downtown streets and cross at the crosswalk and go to the library and just lose yourself in the book stacks. And what an escape that was for me too. So we share that in common. I want to thank everyone who's here today for welcoming us, especially our principal from the Albany School of Humanities, Marie Coulihan. Let's give her a round of applause for Superintendent Joseph Hochreiter, the Albany School District. We see him many places, and you've really profoundly changed this school district for the better, and we're getting into the specifics, but I want to thank you for all you've done. Again, Raylena Terrell, fifth grader, great job, well written, well said. Marine biologist, maybe a writer too. I'm just putting that out there. County Executive Dan McCoy, I believe, is in the room, I'm told. Yes, no? Okay, misinformation there. Melinda Person, the president of NYSET. We just saw her up in Syracuse yesterday where we announced that we're literally changing the curriculum in the schools in the surrounding area of upstate where students are going to learn more about STEM and careers early on because of the 50,000 jobs coming to Micron. And so how exciting that is. So let's give her a round of applause for what she does statewide, but she's always there. So I just got a chance to spend some time with some very adorable first graders who put everything in perspective for you. And I was so impressed to see first graders using their minds in ways that I know was not available when my children were learning how to read. I used to be one of those lunchroom monitors. I'd go and clean the tables off so you can keep an eye on your kids. They think you're there just to help, but you're really like, who are they hanging out with? Are they happy? So I was one of those moms. and spent a lot of time in our schools, and I never saw anything like this. And this gives me a chance to cap off quite an extraordinary week as we went around talking about how New York State really delivers for New Yorkers, from public safety to housing to mental health. And today we're talking about something that one would think is basic, but was not being done the right way, and that is how we teach our children to read here in New York. Teach them to read and to read well. Back in January, after many conversations with Melinda and Randy Weingarten and others who truly believe in lifting up our students, we said we'd launch a Back to Basics initiative, an unprecedented set of solutions designed to reset how our schools approach reading. I was actually rather surprised to find out that other states and some localities had embraced this idea and realized that the way students have been taught for nearly 20 years had now been debunked. It wasn't working. The teachers knew this. The teachers told me this, but nobody stood up and challenged the status quo because, as we see too often here in the state of New York, the answer is, well, we've always done it that way. Those of you who are getting to know me know that it's the worst thing you can tell me, because I'm going to say why. Is it the best way? Can we do better? And we found a way to teach our children in a better way, and we got it done. So I do want to thank everybody who's been part of this and our strong partnership with the legislature. I mean, they're just as engaged and supportive of initiatives like this. So we built a record that is going to make our teachers and students very proud, investing $35.9 billion in schools, a $1.3 billion increase from last year and the highest amount in history. I've committed to raising the bar high since I took office. I've raised school aid for the Albany School District by $47 million, more than 36%. And it is doing very well under the stewardship of our great superintendent here. And again, I want to thank you. As part of that, we're turning the page on how we teach students how to read and bringing us in line with nationally accepted best practices. And this is urgent. We've already lost too many young people who are struggling to read, not just as children, but it carries over into adulthood. It affects your ability to understand everything from filling out your job application to communicating with others and being caught up on the news. If you don't have the full capacity to read properly, it's a setback. So we need to make sure that people can read well and position them for success. But right now, many students in New York are not set up for that success. So I'm pushing this aggressively. I'm glad we got it through in the budgets. I want to start yesterday because research shows that students who don't learn to read by the end of the 3rd grade are more likely to drop out of school years later. And then what happens? They cycle in and out of the criminal justice system in some cases, or they just live in poverty. So this 3rd grade is a critical point in the development of our young people and whether or not they are set up for success or not. So let's take a step back and look at the problem, as I mentioned. Back in the 2000s, many schools relied on something called balanced literacy. Sounds great, doesn't it? Well, it wasn't. That actually contradicts the science of how we read now, how we've learned how to read. It de-emphasized connecting sounds with letters, commonly known what is phonics, and they push students to read by using context clues instead. It shouldn't be a game. You shouldn't have to find clues. It should be right in front of you. Just like the students I saw learning in a classroom a few minutes ago, these children already got it in 1st grade. They were way beyond their years, I could tell. And so it's hard for kids with learning disabilities as well. Those who speak English as a second language, they're at a disadvantage as well. So the hardworking teachers knew this. They were saying, please give us some relief. And finally, we've realized that we need to build on the research that is out there that shows that students who've been exposed to this are reading better, performing better. And that's what's so exciting about this. So the science of reading, I call it back to basics. I'm a little more basic, but it's the science of reading. It's common sense, and you have to master the basics before you can move on to more complex tasks. Just like if you're taking violin lessons, you need to learn the scales before you can play your next violin concerto. No one questions that. But we have not been teaching our kids the right way for so long. And what's embarrassing to me, I come to find out that Connecticut's been doing it the right way, New Jersey has been, proudly know that New York City has been doing it. So has the city of Albany, but it's been left up to people's discretion, district's discretion. So why would we have disparities in this? You know, Albany's been embracing this since 2016. And I'll tell you what, the numbers tell the story. The number of Albany students in grades 3 through 8 passing the state ELA exam has increased by nearly 50%. That's incredible. Let's give that a round of applause. I mean, if you compare third graders at this Albany School of Humanities to third graders across the state, 67% of third graders here who've learned using phonics are proficient in English language arts. Statewide average is 45%. Our goal, laying down the gauntlet right here, let's get the rest of the state up to where they need to be. Let's let them break through that 60% and then go beyond. This is what excites me. We'll be able to judge success a few years from now on how this worked. That is such a contrast, though, between what's happening here and other school districts. It's not the teacher's fault. They're told to teach this way. That's what they learn. So we now have to change the teaching of teachers as well and give them that fighting chance. What I would also say here is extraordinary. Just 3 weeks into kindergarten, 87% of the students can already break down words into sounds thanks to this curriculum. This is how we do it. So that's exactly what we're talking about here today. We're going to make sure that these students have what they need here. Phonics should not be a mystery. It's decoding, it's vocabulary. And again, I want to thank all the teachers here for what you do. It's really paid off. And also, nationally, proud of the fact that this school is one of 65 schools in the whole country and just 2 in New York that are recognized nationally for exceptional student achievement. So let's give them a round of applause for what they do. Again, now when I put this out there, it's a little radical, pushing the status quo, but I also knew I wanted to hear from our teachers on what this meant. And so again, I thank Melinda Person for what she has done in bringing this to our attention and saying that we need to fund this retraining. You cannot just say, go do this. You know, I'm not a huge fan of these mandates. Sometimes we have to, but not always. And the teachers trained years ago had the outdated methods, and now we need to invest in them. Let's do that quickly. They ask for it, they ask for the tools, they ask for the resources. That's why we have $10 million in our budget for teacher training for these programs so they can be prepared to start using them. We're going to start right off with 20,000 teachers and teaching assistants. We go big. We have to make up for lost time here. That is the urgency I'm talking about. So this is how we do it. Also expanding SUNY and CUNY's micro-credentialing programs. They have one at SUNY New Paltz. I was with the Chancellor John King this morning, who was telling me all about how this program works to make sure that our current and future teachers are prepared. So like I said, sometimes you just have to be out there. Question why. And those are some of the critical thinking skills you learn in a school like this that I employ all the time. Why is my favorite why? Why are we doing it this way? And in my opinion, this is the Excelsior State. We should be #1 in every category there is. And when we're not, I'm going to question that. And I will find an answer, and I will find a solution, and we'll break down the barriers to getting it done, because I believe that all of our students deserve to have the best education possible, just like you heard from Raylina, who's obviously doing so well. We wish her the very best when she leaves this school and goes off to 6th grade next year. So I want to thank her, and with that, let me thank everybody here and bring up our superintendent, who can talk about what this really means at the ground level here in the schools where it's actually making a difference. Thank you, everybody.
Well, good morning. And on behalf of the City School District of Albany and our Board of Education members who are here, it's my honor and privilege to welcome everyone to the Albany School of Humanities, which, as the governor mentioned, is a distinguished school recognized by the United States Department of Education's Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Governor Hochul, we are grateful for you to come to Albany School of Humanities to highlight this very important initiative throughout New York State. We're also glad for this opportunity to celebrate the tremendous strides that our students and our staff and entire school community are making. The Albany School of Humanities students had the most significant gains in the entire state last year on the ELA and mathematics assessment. This, of course, earned them the federal government's national distinction. And as you also know, great progress requires great leadership, and our principal, Marie Cullihan, is in her 7th year at the school, and we're very proud to highlight her recognition as the 2024 Capital Area Principals and Administrators Association Principal of the Year. And she will cap off this wonderful Friday morning with a recognition dinner later tonight downstate. So congratulations to Marie, and thank you for your service. As a proud superintendent, I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that this is the 3rd time in the last 6 years that one of our elementary principals has earned this distinction. We're fortunate to have a strong leadership team throughout our organization, as well as dedicated and caring teachers and support staff, all of whom are focused on success of every student in all of our schools. One excellent example of this is the reason we are here today, to champion the critical importance of the science of reading as a core element of our literacy program here in Albany and soon throughout New York State. Our school district began to train teachers explicitly in phonics instruction dating back to 2016. And since then, we've continued to fine-tune this program to fully align with the science of reading standards. Since the district embraced the science of reading, as the governor mentioned, the percentage of students in grades 3 through 8 achieving proficiency on New York State exams have increased by nearly 50%, and our internal data shows growth as well. In our NWEA testing, where the 50th percentile represents a year of growth for instruction, our scores are increasing, and as scores increase, gaps are being closed. Last year, in the spring of '23, our students in grades K through 5 achieved a growth score in the 57th percentile in reading. That's up from 52% pre-pandemic era. These results included scores in the 60th percentile for our youngest students in grades K through 2. This is the first time the district has reached a 60th growth percentile in NWA reading assessments ever. This school year, we rolled out Heggerty's Bridge to Reading program district-wide, implementing this new phonics program along with resources to support all of our elementary teachers. 3 weeks into the school year this fall, 87% of our kindergartens scored proficient on that measure. They were able to break words into individual sounds, a direct correlation of what this new program is teaching and the results students are experiencing. Our alignment with the science of reading also was fortified this winter with internal data demonstrating that word fluency rating among first graders increased at a level that we have never seen before in Albany. This aligns with all of our data showing similar results with first graders in other districts that have implemented the Heggerty program. We have made intentional investments throughout our organization to support teachers, and as the governor mentioned, we participate in one of the first districts to participate in the micro-credential partnership with SUNY New Paltz. And our district has a long-standing commitment to instructional coaching so that we're implementing the science of reading with fidelity across all 12 of our elementary schools. The science of reading is working for students throughout our school district. We believe wholeheartedly in this approach, and Governor Hochul, we appreciate your leadership and critical educational initiative to bring this to all students in New York State. Thank you for joining us at Albany School of Humanities. We are appreciative that you're highlighting this important message and that you were able to spend some time with our students and staff. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce a good friend and colleague, Melinda Person, the president of the New York State United Teachers Association.
Thank you, Joe. We are so excited to be here today celebrating this effort to make sure that every child has the ability to learn to love reading. And I come here to speak on behalf of NYSET's 700,000 members, but also I am here as a mom of young children, and in particular, I'm thinking this morning of my daughter that I dropped off at pre-K, and as she left, she's almost 5, but she reminds me she's 4 3/4. But as a parent, I'm also really grateful for this initiative that we've been able to work on in partnership with the governor. So I want to thank you so much for this work on behalf of educators and parents throughout New York State. Since we announced this plan back in January, I've talked to countless educators across the state, and when I visited their classrooms, I've asked them, so where are you doing the science of reading here? And one of the most common responses I heard back was, well, yes, but I only learned about it a year ago or 2 years ago. And they respond, I just didn't know. Nobody told me about this new information until recently. And I think that's really important because our teachers care so deeply about the success of their students. And when they know, they do better. And they strive constantly to learn and professionally grow because that is who they are. And so we're not here to talk today about there's only one way to teach or there's only one curriculum. The science of reading is a series of instructional practices that educators can incorporate into their classroom. Sequencing, phonemic awareness, phonics, right? The things that the governor talked about. It's not about what students are learning, but how they are learning it. And I think it's important that we remember that this is still a complex task. We say back to basics, but teaching a child to read is not simple. It is a complex order of operations, and the science of reading is more than just a buzzword of the day. This is the result of decades of research, and it's about changes in what we know about the science, the brain science of reading, and how children learn best. They're not the latest fads, and this is not just something that's going to pass next year and we'll be on to the next thing. This is what we know best about how to educate our young people. And what we've learned also is how our educators need support. Our educators, there's often a gap between what our educators need to support all students and what we are able to provide them. So I am so excited that this $10 million will go toward NYSET's Education and Learning Trust so that we can have educators teaching educators professional best practices. Again, I want to close just thanking the governor for her leadership, and I want to thank all of the educators who've been a part of this success story that we are highlighting today. They are truly the heroes of this story, and I want to thank our students who are succeeding and excelling and making us all so proud. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, this concludes our program. Thank you for joining us today. podium this way. It's interesting. Thank you. I'm glad to see the balance, though. All right, check 1, 2, 1, 2. Podium check. Let's leave our thumbs up for me, please. A little bright. Just leave them up. Yep. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate it. Anybody from radio we good with the mults? That's all right. Check 1, 2, 1, 2. You're good. Thanks, John. Thank you, guys.
And don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination. Though you may find from time to time complications. Cannot slip. Just move on up. For peace you'll find into the steeple of beautiful people where there's only one kind. So hush not, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Remember your dream is your only scheme, so keep on pushing. Take nothing less than the supreme best. Do not obey rumors people say, but you can pass the test. Just move on up to a greater day. With just a little faith, if you put your mind to it, you can surely do it. so easy living day by day, out of touch with the rhythm and blues. But now I need a little give and take. The New York Times, the Daily News. It comes down to reality, and it's fine with me, 'cause I've let it slide. Don't care if it's Chinatown or rotten Riverside. I don't have any reason.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I feel like a teacher up here. Good morning, class. Great to see everybody. Any questions about our press event this morning?
Start with on topics about education.
Governor, how quickly do you want to see this rolled out? I mean, obviously it's been a big focus of Mayor Adams in New York City as well. How quickly can it be expanded to the whole state, and how quickly would you like to see it?
Well, given now that it is the policy of the state of New York now to teach this new science of learning, science of reading, I would like to see some rollouts this fall. But the teachers are at different levels of training in this. There may be some teachers who have a sense of it, they're ready to go. Again, it's a series of strategies. It's not one book that says teach this. It's a series of strategies for them to incorporate into the curriculum. And I just saw some examples, and you saw the examples of how that's being done. So I think some of it can be rolled out as early as this fall. Other areas teachers are going to need training, but these are not long training sessions. This is not a 2-year training process. So I'm hoping that this will be rolled out as soon as next fall in many districts.
10 million on topic, Ron? Go ahead. 10 million for the NYSA Trust to train these teachers. How did we come to that 10 million number?
That was a request for them to be able to start with the first tranche of 20,000 students. But as I mentioned, we also have other ways this can be taught. SUNY New Paltz is perhaps the only place in the nation that has a micro-credential in this, so we're sending teachers there to get this additional learning, and they're coming back and going right into school. So we're hitting it from a number of different ways, not just the teachers and their teacher learning centers, but also through SUNY as well.
Education related, there have been some intense protests going on at Columbia University, and I know that there's a fine line that they're trying to walk between protecting free speech and discrimination and protecting Jewish students. What's your response to that? How should that be handled?
It's very clear. My number one priority is protecting the safety of all New Yorkers and students, including students, Jewish students, students protesting. Every student has to feel safe walking on their campuses, or else they're in violation of state and federal human rights laws. Every school is required. Every school that receives state and federal funding has to create a non-discriminatory environment. I was on campus this week at Columbia. Didn't bring an entourage. It wasn't about the press. It was about having a meaningful conversation about what are their public safety strategies, what are they doing, and that results in remote learning. It results in a strong presence at the perimeter of police if necessary. It means keeping only students on campus, not outside agitators. It means having escorts available, so a student who's anxious about leaving the campus to go to the primary campus, to go to their off-campus housing and has to walk through cities, they don't feel intimidated. So I talked to SUNY Chancellor this morning, talked to the CUNY Chancellor this morning. I'll be speaking to more of the, I spoke personally to many of the New York City presidents, and I tell them, this is your responsibility. So yes, it is a fine line, but free speech cannot devolve into threats of violence or violence. That is the crystal clear line that cannot ever, ever be crossed. And we are monitoring. We are working closely with local and federal law enforcement to keep an eye on the situation. But there are no known threats of violence at this time. That's important to get out there. This is being heavily watched, but making sure that we adhere to the constitutional freedoms to protest peacefully, and crosses into non-peaceful protests, then certainly all these colleges, universities know how to activate the request for additional help.
How law enforcement has gotten involved so far, the current arrests that have happened, has that been the right?
That is at the discretion of those individual campus leaders, the presidents, and the determination was made by a number that this would be the way to stabilize the environment, and that is their judgment. History will tell whether or not that was the right call in that moment, but right now they're dealing with a very tense situation. I also asked for information on all their commencement plans. I want to know that this is well thought out. What protections do you have? Security measures in place, additional resources you're bringing to the table. I need to know that these commencements are going to be safe environments as well, all across the state, and so that's what we're focused on right now.
Time for one more. Dan.
Governor, two questions for you. Given the Harvey Weinstein decision by the Court of Appeals yesterday, do you think that there's any state legislation that should be passed to avoid that happening again? And number two is, you've got a lot done in the budget for your agenda. You've got about a month of session left. Do you want to do anything big during that time?
Certainly I want to focus on the social media elements that we spoke about that we weren't able to get through, and that was not any difference of opinion on the need to protect young people from these algorithms that are bombarding them with negative images, tearing at their mental health, which is fragile for teenagers in the first place. So that's what we're focused on. I believe we'll have a good package by the end of the session. Our teams are still working together. So that would be a top priority right now. There are other issues I want to still get through that we're working, the cleanup of everything, so much got in the budget. Surprising many observers, I would say. But there are opportunities always to do more, but I'm already putting together what I want to work on for next year's budget because I enjoy the process so much. Look forward again to next year's. Harvey Weinstein, yes, we are analyzing the scale of that decision, the impact, what it means, and how we can make sure that all women feel safe coming forward, that they can tell what happened to them. I don't want this to be a moment of stifling the environment that was created where finally we're calling out people who are abusing women in their presence, and whether it's physical, whether it's rape, whether it's just workplace harassment. We are working very hard, in changing cultures in places like Hollywood and in governments and different places, and we don't want to have any setbacks where there's this sense that you now have to be silenced, and that's something we have to protect. Make sure.
Should Trump be allowed to be cross-examined on crimes he hasn't been directly charged with, like raping E. Jean Carroll?
That is something that's being played out in the courts as we speak, and there are judges who will be the ones who make those decisions. So,
doctrine goes side by side with the Sandoval here.
Well, I will tell you, this decision is very recent in the Court of Appeals. It is still being analyzed, and we'll see what effect it has in other courtrooms across the state. And that is what I'll say on that matter.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to go.
Thanks, everybody.